It was a quiet September afternoon in 1970, and the streets of Arlington, Washington seemed ordinary, peaceful, almost too peaceful. But on that day, 17-year-old Jeanette Rose Miller took a walk that would change everything. She stepped onto the Lincoln Bridge, her brown hair catching the sunlight, her new skirt swaying with each careful step, and then she vanished. No struggle, no trace, no sign of what happened next. Police scoured the area, friends and family searched desperately, but nothing explained her sudden disappearance. No belongings were left behind. No witnesses saw more than a fleeting figure. Was she taken by a stranger? Did she run away? Or was there something darker lurking in the shadows of that small town? Over 50 years later, the questions remain, unanswered and haunting. We unravel the mystery of Jeanette Rose Miller, a cold case that refuses to be forgotten. 17-year-old Jeanette Rose Miller was the kind of girl who seemed to glow with quiet confidence, the kind of presence that could fill a room without a word. Born on September 14th, 1953, in Arlington, Washington, she had grown up in a community where everyone knew each other, a small town where secrets were few, or so it seemed. Jeanette was ordinary in many ways, yet there was something about her that drew attention. A curious spark behind her brown eyes, a gentle determination in the way she moved, and a careful sense of style that made her stand out just enough without trying. On the surface, she was a typical teenager. She loved horses, had recently purchased a new one that she adored, and shared warm relationships with her family and friends. But beneath that ordinary facade lay the vulnerability of youth, the unpredictability of fate, and the fragility of life in a town that would soon be shaken to its core. Her mornings were filled with laughter and routine. She would chat with neighbors, brush her brown hair until it shone, and carefully choose her outfit, a long-sleeved white shirt, a patterned skirt of white, yellow, and dark blue, and her brown suede jacket with fringes, completed by a gold chain belt. Even in the simplest acts, there was a precision, a mindfulness, as if she intuitively understood the importance of the small details. Friends would later recall how she walked with confidence along the sidewalks, how she smiled at familiar faces, and how, on that fateful September day, she seemed to carry no hint of the danger that lurked unseen. But even in the calmest towns, shadows move quietly. There were whispers, some ignored, some barely noticed, about men driving slowly along the streets, strangers asking odd questions, and eyes that lingered longer than was polite. None of these details seemed important at the time, dismissed as coincidence or paranoia, but in hindsight, each one became a thread in a tapestry of mystery that would never unravel completely. Jeanette's life, so ordinary and so promising, was about to collide with something extraordinary in its darkness. Family and friends described her as responsible, affectionate, and deeply connected to those she loved. She had no reason to run away, no disputes or secrets that would push her to vanish. Yet, in every disappearance, investigators would later note, the ordinary can mask the extraordinary. A single misstep, a fleeting decision, a momentary trust in the wrong person, these could change everything in an instant. As the camera of memory pans back, we can almost see her on that ordinary afternoon. Hair catching the sunlight, the gentle sway of her skirt, a sense of anticipation that could have been excitement or fear. No one can say. Despite her youth, Jeanette possessed an awareness beyond her years. She had been attentive, careful, and yet, like many teenagers, she carried an openness to the world that made her both courageous and, unknowingly, vulnerable. Each smile she offered, each friendly wave, each nod to passing neighbors was a demonstration of trust that would later be painfully questioned in the search for answers. Her family described her as cheerful, intelligent, and cautious, yet there was no indication that the ordinary routines of her life could prepare her for the sinister unknown that awaited beyond the familiar streets of Arlington. Even the smallest details about her appearance would later become crucial clues. The three-piece dental inlay on her upper left teeth, her choice of shoes, dark blue, scuffed slightly from everyday wear, and the subtle charm of her jacket fringes moving with each step. These were markers of identity, tiny fingerprints in a world of shadows, and they would stand as silent sentinels, awaiting recognition in the long and arduous investigation that would follow. As the days passed, neighbors would recall fleeting impressions, the way she lingered on the bridge, her gaze perhaps catching something beyond the ordinary, the faint rustle of the leaves as a car passed by, the subtle click of her gold chain belt brushing against her jacket. Small, almost imperceptible moments that would, in retrospect, feel laden with foreboding. The ordinary life of Jeanette Rose Miller was interwoven with these tiny threads of tension, creating a fragile balance between innocence and danger. Little did anyone know that the young girl who walked so confidently among friends, family, and familiar streets was about to step into a story that would baffle investigators for decades. The ordinary would become extraordinary. The predictable would turn chaotic, and the sunlight on her hair that afternoon would be one of the last glimpses of a world that seemed so safe. Every smile, every gesture, every careful step she took was about to become a piece of a puzzle no one could solve, an enigma that would haunt Arlington and captivate those who dared to chase the shadows of her disappearance. In the quiet streets, among the familiar faces, a girl vanished, and from that vanishing, a mystery was born. A story of trust, danger, and unanswered questions that would stretch over half a century, drawing in those who refuse to forget, those who still seek the truth behind the last walk of Jeanette Rose Miller. The morning of September 16th, 1970, dawned like any other in Arlington, Washington. Crisp air, the distant hum of traffic, and the quiet rhythm of a town unaware of the darkness that would soon descend. 17-year-old Jeanette Rose Miller awoke with a sense of anticipation, her mind occupied with thoughts of her new horse, errands she wanted to run, and the simple pleasures of her afternoon. She dressed carefully, selecting her long-sleeved white shirt, patterned skirt of white, yellow, and dark blue, and her brown suede jacket with its fringed edges swaying as she moved. Her gold chain belt clicked softly with each step, and her dark blue shoes scuffed faintly against the worn pavement. To any passerby, she appeared as ordinary as any teenage girl. But as we know now, ordinary can be deceiving. After a brief farewell to her family, Jeanette stepped outside, the sun catching the strands of her brown hair, and began walking toward the Lincoln Bridge, a route she had taken countless times. At first, the streets seemed empty, quiet, as if holding its breath. Birds chirped in the background, a bicycle rattled along a nearby alley, and a dog barked faintly in the distance. Each ordinary sound now takes on a haunting tone, a subtle foreshadowing of the events that were about to unfold. As she approached the bridge, a few distant figures observed her from their cars or windows, but no one spoke, no one approached. Her steps were measured, confident, unaware that these final moments would imprint on the collective memory of Arlington for decades to come. And then, the ordinary turned unsettling. Reports later suggested that a vehicle had been seen idling nearby, though no eyewitness could confirm its connection to her. A shadow moved across the bridge's edge, unnoticed, blending with the sunlight and the swaying trees. Neighbors would later recall small, eerie details: the faint creak of a tire on the wooden planks, the soft rustle of leaves as if someone or something was following, a glimmer of movement in the reflection of a passing window. Each detail seemed insignificant at the time, easily dismissed, but they now formed the edges of a picture that no one could fully grasp. Her disappearance was abrupt, silent, and complete, a vanishing act without the smallest struggle or cry. By mid-afternoon, alarm rippled through her home. Jeanette had not returned, and calls to friends yielded no answers. Panic replaced routine. Family members retraced her steps, scanning streets, calling neighbors, questioning anyone who might have noticed a stranger or unusual activity. The initial hours became a frantic blur, a search along the Lincoln Bridge, the surrounding roads, and nearby parks, conversations with local shopkeepers who barely remembered seeing her that day, frantic scribbles of notes and observations that would later serve as the skeleton of the investigation. The police were notified quickly, and the Snohomish County Sheriff's Office mobilized immediately. Officers combed the area with flashlights as dusk began to settle, canvassing homes and businesses, looking for any trace of the teenage girl who had simply disappeared. They interviewed witnesses, checking for inconsistencies and overlooked clues, but each lead quickly dissolved into uncertainty. No discarded items, no signs of a struggle, no indications of where she might have gone. The case began its transformation from a missing person report into a cold, haunting mystery. Meanwhile, the town buzzed with speculation and unease. Theories circulated. Had she accepted a ride from a stranger? Was it a random act of violence? Or was there something more sinister, lurking unseen in the quiet streets, waiting for the perfect moment? Each hypothesis seemed plausible, yet impossible to confirm. The uncertainty amplified fear, turning the familiar streets into a landscape of shadows and doubt. Even decades later, the afternoon of September 16th remains vivid in fragments. A girl walking confidently, the sunlight dancing on her hair, the faint click of her belt, and then the emptiness. No one could predict what had occurred. No one could explain how she vanished. Every detail, from the careful choice of clothing to the route she walked, now serves as a haunting reminder that life can shift from ordinary to inexplicably tragic in an instant. As night fell, the search extended beyond Arlington, reaching neighboring towns and authorities, but the trail had already gone cold. No cries, no footprints, no evidence, just questions that would grow heavier with each passing year. The events of that day left behind a puzzle without a solution, a chilling enigma that demands answers. What truly happened on that quiet September afternoon? Who, if anyone, was watching? And why did a girl so alive and vibrant vanish without a trace? These questions, unanswered and haunting, would set the stage for an investigation that would stretch over decades, challenging detectives and captivating anyone who dares to follow the trail of Jeanette Rose Miller. The initial hours after Jeanette Rose Miller's disappearance were filled with confusion, urgency, and the eerie sense that something profoundly wrong had taken place in the otherwise peaceful town of Arlington. As news of her vanishing reached the Snohomish County Sheriff's Office, officers immediately began assembling what little information was available: a detailed description of Jeanette's appearance, the clothes she wore, and the location where she was last seen, walking across the Lincoln Bridge. Despite the specificity, the details offered no concrete leads. It was as if she had simply vanished into thin air, leaving only questions behind. Detectives and deputies fanned out across the area, retracing Jeanette's steps from her home to the bridge, checking every alleyway, park, and side street. They questioned neighbors and passers-by, hoping someone had noticed anything unusual. Was there a suspicious vehicle parked along her route? Had someone followed her? Each witness produced fragments of memory, glimpses of movement, a fleeting figure, a car that seemed out of place, but nothing solid enough to form a pattern. The uncertainty gnawed at the investigators, who were aware that the first 48 hours in a disappearance case are critical, and yet here, the trail was already growing cold. Family members, desperate for answers, scoured the town themselves, posting flyers and calling friends. Their grief was compounded by frustration as they received conflicting reports, some credible, some clearly mistaken. A neighbor remembered seeing a car idling near the bridge around the time Jeanette disappeared, while another thought they had glimpsed a teenage girl resembling her in a local market. Every lead seemed tantalizingly close, yet ultimately dissolved under scrutiny. Investigators began mapping these sightings, but the more they examined, the more tangled the web became. Within the sheriff's office, tension grew. Detectives pored over the most minute details: the click of Jeanette's gold chain belt, the swaying fringe of her jacket, the scuffed soles of her blue shoes, all potential identifiers, all potential clues. Yet the absence of struggle, the lack of witnesses seeing a confrontation, and the complete lack of physical evidence created a maddening void. Each moment that passed without discovery only deepened the sense of urgency and fear. As the day progressed, police explored every conceivable scenario. Could Jeanette have left voluntarily? Investigators quickly dismissed the idea. Friends and family attested to her contentment, her plans, her attachment to her new horse. Could it have been an accident? The terrain around the bridge was examined repeatedly: creeks, undergrowth, and nearby woods, yet nothing was found. Then came the chilling possibility of abduction. The notion that someone could have been watching, waiting for the perfect opportunity, sent shivers through those involved in the search. By nightfall, patrols had expanded, streetlights illuminating empty roads that now seemed fraught with hidden threats. Officers used flashlights to sweep under bridges and through shadows, their beams catching only the occasional rustling leaves or shifting shadows. Every noise became a potential clue, every passing car a possible suspect. The suspense was palpable, as if the town itself held its breath, watching the investigators chase ghosts. Amid the flurry of activity, small, mysterious details emerged. A passerby claimed to have seen a dark car slowly navigating near the bridge earlier in the day. Another reported hearing a faint cry, indistinct, possibly imagined, but investigators noted it, unwilling to discount any potential lead. These fragments, though inconclusive, would later fuel speculation, giving rise to theories that would haunt the case for decades. Stranger abduction, a predatory local, or something far more sinister hidden in the ordinary streets of Arlington. Despite tireless searching, interviews, and mapping, the investigation began to chill. The lack of evidence, combined with the normalcy of the area, created a paradox. How could a teenage girl vanish in broad daylight without a trace? The detectives' frustration mounted, their early confidence eroding under the weight of a case that seemed to resist all logic. Each unanswered question intensified the mystery, creating an atmosphere thick with tension, doubt, and the haunting realization that this disappearance might not be solved with conventional methods. In these early days, the seeds of a cold case were planted. Every missed clue, every fleeting memory, every shadowy figure became part of a puzzle that refused to fit together. The ordinary streets, the familiar faces, the quiet rhythm of Arlington, all now carried a weight of uncertainty. And as the night deepened over the town, the question that would linger for decades became clear. Where was Jeanette Rose Miller, and who or what had taken her from a world that seemed safe, ordinary, and familiar? As days turned into weeks following Jeanette Rose Miller's disappearance, the investigation began to expand beyond simple searches and interviews. With no physical evidence to follow, detectives and amateur sleuths alike were forced into the murky territory of theories and suspects, an unsettling landscape where every possibility, no matter how improbable, demanded consideration. Each new idea brought its own tension, its own shadows, adding layers of suspense to a case that was already gripping in its mystery. One of the earliest theories centered on the frightening possibility of a stranger abduction. In the quiet town of Arlington, a passing car or an unfamiliar figure could easily blend into the routine of daily life. Witnesses reported seeing vehicles loitering near the Lincoln Bridge around the time Jeanette was last seen. Some described a dark-colored car, its driver unknown, while others mentioned a stranger who seemed to watch from a distance. These fragmented accounts, though inconsistent, began to form a haunting pattern, an unseen presence that could strike swiftly, leaving nothing behind. Detectives wondered, had Jeanette unknowingly walked into the path of someone waiting, hidden in plain sight? Another chilling possibility emerged in whispers linking her disappearance to Ted Bundy, the infamous serial killer who would later terrorize the Pacific Northwest. While no evidence ever confirmed his involvement, his presence in Washington around that time was documented, and certain forum discussions speculated on a possible connection. Some believed that his vehicle had been seen near Arlington, though official records offered no confirmation. The idea alone introduced a terrifying uncertainty. The thought that someone like Bundy could have crossed paths with a teenage girl, unseen, unpredictable, and unstoppable. It was a hypothesis that, even if unproven, amplified the fear surrounding the case and colored every attempt to understand what had happened. Other theories veered into the shadows of local crime. Some suggested that Jeanette might have encountered individuals involved in illicit activities, a hidden marijuana grow site, a criminal operation operating quietly in the outskirts of town. According to anecdotal reports later compiled by online forums, such locations existed near the areas she frequented. Could she have stumbled upon something dangerous? Was her disappearance a tragic accident of being in the wrong place at the wrong time? The lack of physical evidence made these scenarios impossible to prove, yet they persisted, feeding the tension and the unknown. Even the notion of voluntary disappearance, though considered, seemed increasingly unlikely. Friends and family emphasized Jeanette's attachment to her community, her excitement over her new horse, and the absence of conflicts or threats in her life. Her disappearance did not fit the pattern of a runaway. There were no notes, no preparations, nothing to suggest she would leave willingly. And yet, the absence of concrete leads forced investigators to keep even this possibility open, unwilling to dismiss any potential avenue of explanation. The interplay of these theories created a sense of narrative dissonance, each plausible in isolation, yet none entirely consistent with the facts. Detectives and amateur investigators found themselves chasing shadows, analyzing witness statements that conflicted, re-examining reports that offered tantalizing hints, yet ultimately yielded nothing tangible. Every dark possibility seemed to fork into another, each new lead branching into more questions. Was there a stranger who targeted her? Someone calculating and patient? Could an unforeseen danger in a familiar location explain her disappearance? Or was it a combination of misfortune and circumstance so precise that it left no trace behind? As investigators pieced together these dark possibilities, the sense of urgency and dread intensified. Every vehicle reported, every glimpse of a stranger, every faint sound recalled by neighbors became a potential clue, yet none resolved the mystery. The ordinary streets of Arlington now felt layered with unseen threats, with eyes that may or may not have been watching, and paths that may have led to danger beyond comprehension. For those following the case, whether detectives, family members, or curious online communities, the tension lay not only in what had happened, but in what remained unknown. Each theory offered a glimpse into what might have occurred, but simultaneously reminded everyone of the vast emptiness surrounding the truth. In the absence of answers, the imagination fills the gaps, turning everyday locations into potential sites of horror, everyday people into possible suspects, and every small detail into a clue that might, or might not, unlock the secrets of Jeanette Rose Miller's disappearance. The theories persisted, evolving with time, but the mystery remained. Stranger abduction, connection to a serial killer, local criminal activity, voluntary escape, all possibilities that teased the edges of reality without ever providing closure. And as each lead dissolved into uncertainty, the cold case deepened, leaving behind an enduring question: who or what had taken a teenage girl from the streets of Arlington in broad daylight, and why did no one see it coming? Decades after Jeanette Rose Miller vanished, the case remained a haunting enigma, defying resolution, despite advances in investigative techniques. By the late 20th century, forensic science had evolved, and hope began to flicker that modern methods might finally shed light on what had happened on that quiet September afternoon in 1970. The Snohomish County Sheriff's Office, in collaboration with national databases and organizations like the Doe Network, preserved DNA samples from Jeanette, a lifeline that could, in theory, connect her to any discovered remains or hidden evidence decades later. Yet even with these tools, the trail remained cold, the answers elusive, and the questions as urgent as ever. Investigators revisited old files, combing through witness statements and revisiting every detail with renewed scrutiny. They analyzed photographs of her clothing, notes about her appearance, and the peculiar dental inlay in her upper left teeth, hoping that a combination of small, overlooked factors might reveal a clue. Each item was meticulously cataloged, every statement cross-referenced, yet the case refused to yield even the smallest breakthrough. The lack of tangible evidence, a body, personal belongings, or reliable eyewitness accounts, frustrated experts, creating a tension that intensified with each passing year. In the 21st century, the rise of genealogy databases and DNA technology promised new avenues of hope. Genetic genealogists suggested that even decades-old cases could be revived, that familial DNA connections might finally reveal a lead. Teams of specialists attempted to trace potential matches, comparing Jeanette's preserved DNA to unidentified remains discovered in Washington and beyond. Yet each comparison returned with the same disappointing result: no match, no confirmation, no closure. The absence of results did not diminish the urgency, however. It only heightened the mystery, deepening the sense that the case was as much about what remained hidden as what could be found. Despite the frustrations, small details continued to emerge, each carrying the weight of potential significance. A faint memory from a neighbor, a report of an unidentified vehicle near the Lincoln Bridge, or even a stray comment about suspicious activity in nearby wooded areas. All these fragments were revisited with a forensic lens. Analysts applied modern techniques to old photographs, old fingerprints, and even minute fibers collected from her clothing. Each lead, no matter how seemingly insignificant, became a puzzle piece in a sprawling, unresolved picture. The challenge was compounded by the passage of time. Memories faded, witnesses moved or passed away, and the physical environment itself changed. Trees grew, roads were rerouted, and familiar landmarks were replaced. Investigators faced the daunting task of reconstructing a single afternoon from fragments scattered across decades. Yet in every setback there remained a glimmer of hope. The preserved DNA samples, the detailed descriptions of her clothing and appearance, the careful notes from early detectives, all could, theoretically, converge into an answer if the right breakthrough emerged. Online communities and amateur sleuths added a new dimension to the investigation. Forums such as Web Sleuths analyzed every detail from her clothing choices to the possibility of nearby criminal activity. The combination of public interest, archival research, and modern forensic science created a network of scrutiny unlike anything available in 1970. Each theory was tested against the evidence, each observation cataloged, and every potential lead debated. Though the case remained unresolved, the convergence of technology and communal investigation kept the possibility of discovery alive. Even with these tools, the unanswered questions persisted, haunting both investigators and those who cared deeply for Jeanette. Could the DNA samples one day identify her remains, hidden somewhere in the forests or along forgotten roads? Could a new forensic technique uncover evidence that had eluded earlier generations? Or would the truth remain buried, just out of reach, taunting those who refuse to forget? The tension between hope and despair created an atmosphere of suspense, a story where every small detail might be the key, or a dead end. As the years unfolded, the modern forensic approach became both a beacon and a mirror, reflecting the limitations of human knowledge while offering a tantalizing promise. Each preserved sample, each analyzed fiber, and each genetic comparison kept alive the possibility of revelation. The story of Jeanette Rose Miller remains suspended between what is known and what may yet be discovered, a chilling reminder that some mysteries do not fade with time, but instead grow more intricate, more compelling, and more urgent with every passing year. And as we follow the painstaking efforts of investigators and genealogists alike, we are left with the same haunting question. Will modern science finally unlock the fate of the girl who vanished so mysteriously, or will her story remain one of the coldest, most enduring mysteries in Washington's history? For over 50 years, the disappearance of Jeanette Rose Miller has remained one of Arlington's most haunting mysteries, a case that refuses to fade into the shadows of time. Decades of investigation, speculation, and modern forensic efforts have yet to produce definitive answers, leaving a chilling void where a young girl's life should have continued. Each passing year added layers of frustration, uncertainty, and unanswered questions, creating a tension that has gripped family, investigators, and the public alike. In the early years, the streets and neighborhoods of Arlington were combed relentlessly. Officers revisited the Lincoln Bridge, patrolled alleyways, and scoured wooded areas near the town, yet no trace of Jeanette could be found. Flyers were distributed, press releases issued, and local communities mobilized to search every possible corner. Yet, despite tireless efforts, the tangible evidence remained stubbornly absent. No belongings, no footprints, no signs of struggle, just the empty streets and the echoes of a teenage girl who had vanished without warning. The silence was deafening. And as the months turned into years, the case became emblematic of the frustratingly elusive nature of certain disappearances. Witnesses who had once been sure of what they saw began to question their memories. Others moved away, leaving gaps in the human tapestry that might have held crucial insight. Each potential lead evaporated into uncertainty, leaving detectives with nothing more than the faint outlines of possibilities and a growing awareness that they were chasing shadows. As the investigation lingered in limbo, theories multiplied, some grounded in fact, others in fear and speculation. Online forums and amateur investigators decades later would revisit these possibilities, analyzing small fragments: a dark vehicle seen near the bridge, a fleeting figure glimpsed from a window, whispers of illicit activities on the outskirts of town. Each fragment added to the story, yet none provided resolution. The ordinary streets of Arlington, once familiar and safe, became a landscape of potential danger, a maze of unanswered questions where every corner could hold a clue or a dead end. The family's grief remained constant, evolving into a quiet determination to keep the search alive. They attended public meetings, spoke to journalists, and provided DNA samples for any future testing. The community, too, felt the weight of the unresolved case, a persistent shadow over the small town. The disappearance of a single teenage girl had rippled outward, transforming the town's narrative into one of caution, speculation, and lingering unease. Modern efforts to reinvigorate the investigation included revisiting old evidence with new technology. DNA samples were compared against unidentified remains across Washington and beyond. Witness statements were re-examined, timelines reconstructed, and every possibility from voluntary disappearance to foul play was explored in painstaking detail. Despite these efforts, the case remained unresolved, the trail cold, and the answers elusive. The absence of resolution only deepened the mystery, intensifying the emotional weight for all involved and leaving the public with an uncomfortable sense of uncertainty. Yet the lack of closure also fueled a relentless curiosity. Investigators, historians, and online sleuths alike are drawn to the contradictions, the gaps, and the faint threads that might someday connect the dots. Every unanswered question, why she left the bridge, who might have been watching, what fate befell her, becomes a focal point for speculation and hope. The cold case embodies both the limits of human understanding and the persistent desire to uncover the truth. 50 years of silence do not erase a story. They sharpen it, leaving each unanswered question as a beacon of mystery. The ordinary life of Jeanette Rose Miller, the girl who walked confidently along familiar streets, has been suspended in time, preserved in memory and speculation. The streets where she vanished, the bridge she crossed, the fleeting glimpses of a girl with brown hair and a patterned skirt, all remain etched in the collective consciousness of Arlington. And as investigators, family, and curious minds continue to seek answers, the haunting question endures: will the truth of what happened that September afternoon ever be revealed? Or will Jeanette Rose Miller remain forever a ghost in the town she once called home? The puzzle remains unsolved, the silence unbroken, and the story continues to grip anyone who dares to follow the faint, elusive trail of a girl who vanished into the shadows. The disappearance of Jeanette Rose Miller has left a legacy that stretches far beyond the quiet streets of Arlington, Washington. For over 5 decades, her absence has haunted her family, confounded investigators, and captivated anyone drawn to unsolved mysteries. The story of Jeanette is more than a tale of a missing teenage girl. It is a testament to the enduring human drive to seek answers, to confront uncertainty, and to wrestle with the shadows that linger long after the initial shock has passed. Her family, refusing to let her memory fade, has dedicated years to keeping the search alive. They have participated in community awareness campaigns, shared her story with media outlets, and provided DNA samples in hopes that modern forensic advancements might finally yield results. Each small breakthrough, each renewed lead, has been a flicker of hope in a landscape dominated by unanswered questions. The persistence of her family highlights the emotional toll of cold cases and the profound determination required to navigate decades of uncertainty. The case has also left a mark on the investigative community. Detectives, both past and present, have used it as a model for the complexities inherent in missing person investigations. The lack of immediate evidence, conflicting witness statements, and the passage of time illustrate the myriad challenges in solving disappearances. Investigators have employed every available technique, from traditional interviews and door-to-door canvassing to modern DNA analysis and genealogical searches, demonstrating the evolution of investigative methods over 50 years. Yet, the case continues to resist resolution, serving as a stark reminder that even with technology and expertise, some mysteries remain maddeningly elusive. Online communities and amateur sleuths have become an unexpected extension of the search. Forums dedicated to cold cases and missing persons scrutinize every detail: the description of her clothing, the dental inlay, the last known location on the Lincoln Bridge, and reported sightings in surrounding areas. Theories proliferate, ranging from stranger abduction to accidental death or foul play. each examined and debated with meticulous attention. The collective effort reflects the enduring fascination and the global interest in uncovering truth where official investigations have stalled. Even with all the analysis, speculation, and technology, the unanswered questions remain the most compelling and most unsettling aspect of Jeanette's story. Why did she vanish in broad daylight? Who, if anyone, was observing? Could she have survived somewhere unknown, or was she taken by forces hidden in plain sight? The ambiguity keeps the story alive, compelling those who encounter it to engage with the case, imagine possibilities, and consider every nuance of her last known moments. The mystery itself has become part of the legacy, a haunting echo that persists in both memory and narrative. The streets of Arlington, the bridge she crossed, the ordinary world she inhabited, all are imbued with a lingering tension. The seemingly mundane details of her life, a new horse, a patterned skirt, a gold chain belt, have been transformed into symbols of a narrative suspended in uncertainty. Each image evokes questions, each recollection a potential clue, each shadow a reminder that the ordinary can conceal the extraordinary. The legacy of Jeanette Rose Miller is also a call to action. Her story underscores the importance of vigilance, of preserving evidence, and of maintaining public awareness of unresolved cases. Cold cases are not just historical curiosities. They are ongoing challenges that require persistence, ingenuity, and collaboration. They demand that communities, investigators, and individuals continue to ask questions, to challenge assumptions, and to never allow a story to be forgotten. As the years progress, the search for answers continues. The case inspires hope that one day a breakthrough, whether through DNA analysis, a long-lost witness, or an overlooked detail, will finally bring closure. Until then, Jeanette's story remains a compelling, haunting narrative, a reminder that some mysteries endure not because they cannot be solved, but because they demand relentless attention and courage to pursue. And so the quest for answers continues, drawing in those willing to confront the unknown, to piece together fragments, and to honor the life of a young girl who vanished into the shadows. Her legacy is a living challenge, to seek truth where it is hidden, to question where answers are elusive, and to never forget the girl who disappeared on a quiet September afternoon, leaving a puzzle that has captivated the world for over 50 years.